went out. I was scouring the streets trying to find him. It was a challenge. I got my private eye hat on, and somehow, some way, some of my leads caught up to him.
What I'll admit, I didn't like how that story first started. You were scouring the streets. That made me nervous.
Hey, that's my usual thing. I prowl the streets. But anyway, so we ended up finding him. I thought, you know what? I need to talk to my guy. So we got D Gunn. He is back. He is hopping on with us right now. Look who it is. There he is, D Gunn. Look
at that beautiful chocolate man.
Is that what we're doing?
You got my Hershey shirt on. Did you say
scouring
the streets? You were scouring the streets,
the
looking
mean
for
streets
me?
of Delaware, Bear, Delaware, and I found you somewhere.
Looking for me on the mean streets of Delaware. I'm
mean streets of Bear,
what's
Delaware.
What's he talking about here? What the heck?
So first off, how are you, and how's everything going at home?
Good, man. Everything's at a rapid pace, but you get in a rhythm and you find shortcuts and ways to get things done quicker as well as just as efficiently. And she's getting strong every day. She can help us help her now. Her core strength on the right side is excellent. Left side still weak, has a ways to go. But I appreciate all the love from the Sports Take family and everybody out there. And you guys are always checking in. I appreciate it as always, man, because y'all family too. But yeah, considering it, and talking to a lot of people, have hit me up on DM and Twitter and Facebook about things they've gone through, and I think about how much worse it could have been.
Right.
It's going well, slow but steady, but going well, and that's all we can ask right now.
Her spirits are good.
Spirits are excellent. She's a fighter.
Awesome. Okay.
She wants to prove us wrong when we say, "Honey, you can't do this. You can't do it." Oh yeah, just watch me. And even when she can't do, she's trying. That's nice. The thing. And like the physical therapists and the occupational therapists say, the mental aspect of this is just as important as the physical. And you see her trying, and every day she gets a little bit closer to proving us wrong in certain areas and stuff like that. I mean, it will only be 3 months into this February 4th, and it seems like a lifetime. But 3 months in, and we know we still got a ways to go. Yeah. But everybody involved, all the doctors, all the therapists, they're like, "Wow, she's really doing well." So, that's all we can ask, dude. That's all we can ask.
No doubt. Well, first of all, it's great to see you, man, and I'm glad to touch base with you, because we haven't really had a chance to go over like bigger picture, Kellen Moore, Fangio, etc.
Right.
Different jobs, obviously, and different challenges, Derrick, because Fangio takes over a side of the ball, I think, with less talent altogether, and Moore comes into a more situation to get them going quickly. But let's start there. Let's start with Kellen Moore and what you think he's going to be able to do for them, bring to the table, get Jalen in the right spot. Like, how do you view the offensive side?
Well, I like his pedigree. He had success in both Dallas and with the Chargers, so he does have a pedigree. He's a pass first type guy, and we've always known the Eagles to want to run the ball, as well. So I believe it's going to be a pass first offense. And when you look at the personnel they have in an offense, even if Jason Kelce says, "I'm not coming back," they still have the personnel to get it done. This still is an offense that can accidentally score 25, 28 points a game, which puts them in most games in the National Football League and gives them a chance to win. I think he's going to come in here, and he's not just going to run Nick Sirianni's offense the way Brian Johnson did. I think he's going to come in here with his mindset, okay, here's what I like to do, coupled with your offense, which I think can make it more explosive like it was in 2022. To what degree? Obviously, we're going to sit here, and when I say we, I mean media locally, nationally, across the board that critiques the Eagles day in and day out. We're going to sit here daily and give our opinion on what we think is going to happen, what it's going to look like. And, of course, our opinions are going to vary, whether it's plus or minus, depending on what they do in free agency to enhance the offensive product and or the draft to enhance the offensive product. But we really won't get definitive answers until they hit the ground running when they kick off the season for real in September.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you for being here, D-Gun. I miss you, man.
Likewise, man.
Let's get into it. The whole Kellen Moore thing. It's interesting. I'm optimistic about it, but here's my concern, and I'm curious to know if you've thought about this. Kellen, he's mainly dealt with drop back guys.
Sure.
Dak Prescott, he likes to live in the pocket, not afraid to get mobile, but stays in the pocket. Herbert, same thing. Do you have any reservations or concerns about if Kellen Moore is the right fit for Jalen Hurts? Again, we know Kellen Moore's pedigree. He does great with the blitz. But do you have any reservations about if it's a fit, knowing Jalen Hurts' current skill set?
Well, considering telling this past season they wanted Jalen to stay in the pocket more, no, I think that's a plus because Kellen has been so good. You look at Dak Prescott, his best seasons were under Kellen Moore. You know, when you think about it, when you look at the numbers and his ability, when back in the day when Dak was considered this up and coming, possibly elite quarterback, obviously we know that's not the case. Elite quarterback, it was when Kellen Moore was in the system. So no, I have no problems with that. If anything, I'm hoping Kellen can get it in Jalen's head to look at the checkdowns more. If you look at the type of quarterbacks, even the great Patrick Mahomes, look at how much he checks down and throws the underneath stuff when the deep intermediate pass or the long pass isn't there. I think that was such a forgotten art in this Eagles offense. And I said this to you guys before, and I said it on a number of platforms, and I'll say it again. After that Dallas game down in Dallas, when players tweeted me, look how quick Dak gets that bleeping ball out of his hands compared to how long it takes our pass routes to develop. Why? Look at how many times the underneath route in the Eagles offense was abandoned when he had guys running crossing routes wide open. On a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, why are you going for 15, 20 yards? Why are you putting yourself in harm's way? You got guys standing wide open in the middle of the field. Get the first down, keep the ball in your hands, keep the opposition off the field, keep the clock moving, and hopefully move in for points. They abandoned that element. They played right into the hands. Look at how those games unfolded against Arizona and the Giants, the last 2 games of the season, which should have been gimmies. Why? Because they played right into the opposition's hands. And, of course, they put pressure on Jalen. Both of those teams forced him to make decisions sooner. You've got to have more checkdowns in today's football. The better quarterbacks are not just deep ball throwers. They throw to every area of the field with efficiency, whether it's the short sideline route, the curl in, the screen pass, the crossing routes. The better offenses use the crossing routes time and time again. That's what this team needs to do better to get back to being an elite offense.
Gunner, do you think that was more on Jalen, or was that what they were coaching him to do? Which seems hard to believe, but were they just so over the top with deep shots and chunk plays that you know he was just in that mode?
That's a good question, Rob, and it's hard to give you a definitive answer because all of a sudden we heard the whispers about how Jalen was changing so many plays at the line of scrimmage. So when you hear that, you say, that's on Jalen. Okay, but after every game, these guys, from the time, whether it's a road game or a home game, they hit the ground running. If they're on the road, coaches are already looking at the game film. If they're at home, they're looking at it the next day at 6 a.m. in the morning to analyze it before they have to step before the media again.
Right.
So I would say, was there a coach strong enough to bend Jalen's ear to get him to get back? Hey, look, what do we keep telling you, man? Why have you abandoned this? I don't know if the voice was strong enough in Brian Johnson. We know the relationship was strong, but was the voice strong enough to get in Jalen's head? We don't know those things. Those are behind closed doors things. But when you hear the rumors, the whispers that Jalen's changing multitude of plays at the line of scrimmage, initially you think, hey, that's on Jalen.
Right.
That's on Jalen.
Right.
How did the guy go from being the runner-up MVP in 2022 to a guy who appeared to be lost at times in 23? The easy answer is the competition. Look at the plethora of quality coordinators he faced in 23 compared to the bottom dwellers he faced in 22. It was a gauntlet of great defensive coordinators this year who had plenty of time to study this offense and made it more difficult. When this team shot out to 10-1, the problems were there offensively. They just got the breaks. The ball bounced their way. And as we know, the oblong football bounces your way one day, bounces against you the next day.
Yeah.
The first 11 games, the ball bounced their way. The last 6 games, ball definitely bounced against them.
Yeah.
You know, D-Gunn, with bringing Kellen Moore in, and obviously Vic Fangio, you bring in 2 guys who have a pretty solid amount of experience doing what they do. And then, you know, Nick Sirianni, clearly he's lost a lot of power in this situation. I'm curious to know, what's your expectation for the dynamic between Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore? Because by my estimation, Nick Sirianni is entering this season kind of coaching for his job. So I'm curious to know, when you look at Kellen Moore coming in, knowing that he did interview for the Eagles job in 2021, how do you anticipate that dynamic between him and Sirianni working out?
Sirianni has to make it work, plain and simple. Those discussions have been taken care of behind closed doors. Whether it was Kellen Moore or whoever they brought in, the edict is there. The groundwork has been laid. You got to make it work. I mean, this is your job. Now, on one hand, how many coaches in the first 3 years of existence as a head coach in the National Football League take teams to the playoffs 3 consecutive years in a row, have winning records 3 consecutive years in a row? Even though this year did not end up the way everybody anticipated, Kansas City got to their destination. The Eagles didn't come close. The bottom line is he still got them in the playoffs, which is valuable experience to young players who are evolving. So it didn't work with Brian Johnson, and I give the Eagles credit for this. Unlike a lot of teams, they may have brought their coaching staff back. Well, it was the first year they were together. We know it was rough roads. We're going to bring it back and run it back again in 24. And lo and behold, all of a sudden you have the same problems in 24 that you had in 23. I give the Eagles credit for this. They sat back behind closed doors and said, we got to fix this. Mm-hmm. We got to fix this. And we know we're going to take shots from the media and the fan base, but we got to fix this. So what do? They go out and go get the OC captain, Vic Fangio, for the defense, and they get a fresh mind who's had a measure of success in the offense. So I give them credit for that. They didn't cower to public opinion. They acknowledged that we made mistakes. That's how they may not come out and say it verbatim, but they admit it by making these changes. And there's going to be more significant changes on the coaching staff as well. So I have to give them credit for that. Now, will it come together? Will it work? We're going to be asking that question from now until the time they kick off the 24 season.
Yeah. All right. So let's go there with Fangio for a minute, Gunner. And we know he is the architect of this thing that they like. They are big on not giving up the big play. And that's a trend the whole league has gone to in a lot of ways. Not everybody, but a lot of people. I want to focus on the defensive line because I don't think they're very talented, frankly, on the back end. Why did that unit crater the way that it did? I know the whole team did.
Yeah.
But I look at that team, that especially then they had Fletcher, they had Carter, they had Reddick and Sweat, etc. What happened, do you think, there?
I honestly don't know. The easy answer for Jalen Carter would be he hit that rookie wall and never recovered. Jordan Davis showed flashes, and just when we thought he was going to take that next step, he regressed. I don't know. Josh Sweat didn't have a sack until for 8 consecutive games until the playoff game. I don't know. Hassan Reddick, why is he dropping back in coverage 7-8 snaps a game? I don't know. Rob. The whole thing was just discombobulated. I will say this about Fangio. They called him one of the godfathers of defenses. Down in Miami, he set the franchise record for quarterback sacks with the Dolphins with 56 this year. Then you hear the rumors from Drew Rosenhaus, probably his clients. They didn't get along with Fangio. So I don't care if a player likes a coach. Were they productive? What did the numbers look like? Miami had a decent defense, okay? The Eagles need to get back to the decent defense. The problem with this Eagles defense is, will Howie Roseman address the linebacking situation? I don't care about the draft, the offseason. You talked, Rob, about most defenses are going to this keep everything in front of me mentality. I agree to a certain degree. A lot of defenses do that because they don't have the personnel. But if you look at the 4 teams that were in the Final Four in the playoffs this year, they were all aggressive defenses. Baltimore, Kansas City, San Francisco, Detroit, all aggressive defenses, put pressure on the quarterback, make them make decisions. They were bringing 5-man, 6-man fronts like every other down. So that's why those 4 teams were standing, and that's why you have 2 defenses that are going to put pressure on Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. You have to find a way. You cannot let these quarterbacks today sit back there and pat the ball 1,005, 1,006. They will chew you up because even if you only have a 2 or 3-man route against 4 or 5 guys covering, somebody's coming free sooner rather than later, okay? You have to look at how many teams started to put pressure on Jalen, force him out of the pocket, throw the ball away, underthrow, overthrow. Okay, that's a big difference in today's game. The game is structured for the offense to succeed and the defense to fail in a lot of ways. But a number of teams, a small collection of teams, have found a way to beat that theory. Those 4 teams that were left standing are 4 of the teams that found a way. All right, we can't hit a ball carrier a certain way. We have to be careful how many seconds we hit a quarterback after the pass, but we can make him expedite decision-making process. I like Vic Fangio. in terms of overall defensive structure. I don't like the fact that he doesn't like to blitz a lot. He's relying on a four-man front. Well, let's look at his Eagles four-man front. Will Jordan Davis improve in 24? Don't know. Jalen Carter, I don't even know if Fletcher Cox is going to be here. And I will say this. I will not be surprised. I'm going to say it right now. If Fletcher Cox is not with this team in 24, I will not be surprised.
If he is not.
If he is not with the Eagles in 2024, I will not be surprised.
Yeah, same here. You know,
Brandon Graham, 36 years old in April. They love Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham means more to them than just a football player. He is the epitome of maturity and leadership, both on and off the field. How much does that carry weight in a Vic Fangio type defense? I think Brandon Graham at 36 years old could still be effective 25-30% of the snaps, as well as mentoring the young players that are coming here by way of free agency and or the draft. The Eagles would do everything possible because Brandon Graham has told all of us it's not about the money.
Yeah.
Okay. So he can fit well under the salary cap. Will Howie and Jeffrey have to buckle to what Vic Fangio wants? Is Brandon Graham in or out in the Vic Fangio defense? That remains to be seen.
You know, Diga, yeah, you know, you covered a lot, and you know, you said something really interesting about the fact that defenses, they like to keep things in front of them. You know, it's funny. Scoring was down in the NFL this year. A lot of stat categories were down, and a lot of defensive head coaches got jobs. More defensive head coaches got jobs more so than offensive guys. So clearly, these defenses are starting to catch up to wherever these offenses are. But I want to get into personnel because Vic Fangio has a steep hill to climb with the Philadelphia Eagles from a personnel standpoint. And, you know, we always lock in on the defensive side when it comes to the lack of personnel. But I'm willing to argue from top to bottom, this team needs personnel from a depth perspective, especially on offense. And then defense, they need a bunch of frontline guys. So what do you think should be the Eagles' game plan in terms of handling, you know, this lack of depth, this limited talent on defense? Because the way they've been doing things before, trying to supplement everything in free agency, it's not a sustainable formula. At some point, they're going to have to start drafting well on that defense side of the ball.
Okay, again, let me bring up the teams that were in the Final Four. On defense, linebacking play was instrumental in the success of all four teams getting to where they got. You're going to see stellar linebacking play in the Super Bowl as well, okay? Fred Warner is the best in the game. You look at Nick Bolton on the other side for Kansas City in that collection as well. You know, they're as instrumental in the success of a defense as anything. The Eagles have to get out of this mindset. We can put money here, there, and everywhere else except the linebacking core. They're going to have to spend some money on linebacking. If they're watching the other teams that have success around the league, they are going to have to spend money on linebacking play. I will say this. Go back to the 22 season. We were all shocked. Kansas City, Andy Reid, Spagnuolo decided to go with a bunch of kids, untested kids in the back end of that defense. Well, first and foremost, because they had a stout front seven. But what happened with the kids in the back end of the defense for Kansas City? The first and the middle part of their season was rough going for them. They took a lot of heat, a lot of verbal shots, and they learned some valuable lessons in terms of technique, positioning. But I will say this. There were a bunch of sure tackling kids in the back end. By the time December rolled around, that back end didn't look so bad. When they got to the Super Bowl, that back end and that defense didn't look so bad. And I say that to say this. They do need to spend some money, I'm talking about the Eagles, but they have some young players who can help them right now. I think Sidney Brown is going to be a good safety in the National Football League. The only problem is with his ACL, we don't know how long it's going to take for him to get back to being that Sidney Brown. I think Keely Ringo has some talent. I think Eli Ricks, even as skinny as he is, if he puts on a few more pounds of muscle, Eli Ricks has the speed to be able to run with most receivers in the National Football League. Are the Eagles going to take a chance and go through the growing pains of them being your primary guys in the back end? Don't know. They do need another proven cornerback, that's for sure. Unless they use a first-round pick to draft one, still you bring in a rookie who's got to go through the learning curve. You're not going to find – a Sauce Gardner comes along once in a blue moon. A guy who hits the ground running, who's complete, coming in as a rookie and turns out to be the defensive rookie of the year. Those don't happen. I don't care how good – the Patrick Surtains, I don't care how good you are. You got to go through growing pains. So I think the Eagles are going to spend some money in free agency. It ain't going to be James Bradbury, that's for sure. Yeah. But you got to spend some money in free agency to get a proven cornerback in here because I believe Slay is going to be back again in 24. Now, with that said, Blankenship. Okay. Blankenship's a good hitter, sure tackler. Blankenship's doesn't have much speed. So what are you going to do there? Okay. And you got to find somebody to complement him. And I think it's Sidney Brown. But will Sidney be ready when training camp rolls around? That's a big one. So they've got a lot of questions on that side to answer. How do you replace Fletcher Cox? What is Vic Fangio going to do with Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick in this defense? You got to get some linebackers in here. You need another safety. You need another cornerback. If anybody can work the magic of getting most of what Vic Fangio needs in terms of tweaking dollars here and there, it's Howie Roseman. Now it's on Howie to make it happen.
Speaking of Howie, let's stay on that for a minute, Derrick. You have a good feel for him, I think, a lot of time. This was embarrassing for him, for Jeffrey, with the way this season went. And I know, he sat up there and he talked about Nakobe Dean taking over at line. Still is the guy at linebacker, and they got a good play out of Zach Cunningham. This is more of a broad question, not just linebacker, but how much do you think the way this year went made him question team building and the way that they go about things?
I don't think it made him question team building, Rob, because let's face it. I mean, if we're all being honest with ourselves, after the Eagles draft, we were all salivating at the prospect of what they had as a nucleus on this team. And early in the season, it looked good on paper. We all were talking about Jalen Carter being the defensive rookie of the year. We were talking about how Jordan Davis looked so much better coming out of the gate. It just didn't mesh when they needed it the most. I don't think Howie looks at it as a failure. Howie looks at it as, okay, we've got to go back to the drawing board, reanalyze everything, and retweak it to make it better. This season got under Howie's craw. I mean, I'm sure he had some sleepless nights about this because they thought they had what they needed to at least get close, even if they didn't get to the Super Bowl, to get close to the Super Bowl. And basically, in those last 6 games of the season and that playoff game was a team that was just waiting to go to make their tee times in the offseason and vacation plans. Not that they, and I'm not saying they quit on Nick Sirianni, because I don't believe any player in that locker room quit on Nick Sirianni. I believe they still have a lot of respect for Nick. I believe these guys will play hard for Nick. It just didn't come together. Okay. So now Howie, as they've done with the coaching structure, what did they do? They identified real quick, we've got to change the guys calling the shots on both sides of the ball. We've got to change the coaches that will be around the coordinators on both sides of the ball. We got to get a different mindset here. Now we also may have to tweak a little bit to get a different type of mindset on the guys who step between the lines every Sunday.
D Gunn, I got to push back a little bit on the Nick Sirianni coaching dynamic with the players. I mean, I would like to believe, what you're saying, if it was like a 3-game stretch, even a 4-game stretch, but 1-7 in your final 8 games that seems to me like a bigger problem than just, hey, things didn't bounce our way.
Think about this, Tom. Think about how they won some of those 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Okay. A 59-yard field goal to send a game in overtime to Buffalo to win that game. Justin Jefferson fumbles the ball out of the end zone on a potential scoring drive. There were 2 other games where the opposition was driving for potential go-ahead scores, and on 4th down situations, the receiver caught the ball out of bounds, 1 foot out of bounds. Okay. Those things played in the favor of the Eagles. Let's look at how certain things started to play against the Eagles. Go to Seattle. Njigba, unbelievable catch over the shoulder with a backup quarterback to lose that game. Okay. You look at how they so the ball bounces your way sometimes. It just didn't happen. This is not an isolated incident with the Eagles. We've seen this happen with many teams that start out like gangbusters and fade down the stretch. That's why I say when people, this team is 4-0 in the preseason and all of a sudden goes 6-10, 6-11 in the regular season. This team can't win a game in the preseason. All of a sudden they're in the NFC Championship game. It happens. That's the nature of football. It just happens. There's no analytics. We live by analytics now in pro sport. There's no analytics when it comes to the ball bouncing for you or against you. It's the history of pro football.
How far are they? And I'll just throw the Niners and the Lions out there. If you want to put others ahead of them, fine, Derrick. But how far are they from those teams in your estimation right now?
As we sit here right now, I'm not going to say light years, but they are behind. They're definitely behind the Niners. They're definitely behind Detroit. And you have to start thinking about other teams that are creeping up on them. A young Green Bay team comes from out of nowhere. beat the snot out of Dallas, and should have beat San Francisco.
Yes.
The youngest team in the National Football League all of a sudden got hot at the right time. See, we talk about hot and cold. Green Bay, the youngest team in the league, stumbles most of the season. All of a sudden, the light goes on for Jordan Love. This dude ends up throwing 32 touchdown passes, went 4 for 4 in the red zone against Dallas, and had the
one
they
mistake.
went 2 for 5.
Yeah.
What was more than that, Rob? They were 2 for 5 in the red zone against this stout 49ers defense.
Right.
The 49ers hadn't give up a 100-yard rusher in how many years?
Yeah.
They ran up and down the field on the 49ers
right.
defense.
100%.
See what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
teams like Green Bay and New Orleans moving in a different direction with a new coordinator. Okay, so you got to start thinking about. I'm not just looking at a few teams ahead of me. There's 4 or 5 teams that are behind me now that are creeping up on us that we have to worry about as well.
Yeah. Last one for me, D Gunn. So when you look at this team, right, and we said a lot. How far away is this team from being legitimate Super Bowl contenders at this point? No one will know about them now, in the past, and potentially what could happen in the future. How far is this team? How long of a fix is this? This is a 1-year fix, a 2-year fix? How are you digesting this thing?
I think it's fixable this year, to be honest. Wow. I think if they get a slot receiver, to go along with AJ and Devontae, that's a big help. You got a premier tight end. You got a stout offensive line, even if Kelsey doesn't come back. DeAndre Swift, they better bring him back. Okay,
I hope so.
I think the running back situation is fine in that regard. The quarterback, he's going to have to get back to what he was in 22. If they get some of the issues taken care of in the offseason on the defense, I think this team is not far away. I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team, but they still have a nucleus to compete to get to the NFC Championship game.
Well, that's what I'm asking, right? Like, how far is this team from being a real Super Bowl contender?
I think 4 or 5 players, but you can't get them all in free agency because of the cap restriction. I mean, think about this. You gave a quarterback $250 million. You have a $100 million receiver. And are you going to pay Devontae this year or next year? Now, if I'm the Eagles, I can't afford to pay Devontae this year because no team in the NFL is going to have 2 $100 million receivers on their roster. If they pay Devontae this year, what are you going to do with AJ? Because I guarantee you they're going to keep young Devontae over AJ. And I'm not saying they're going to trade AJ, but if somebody's giving a first-round draft pick for AJ Brown and a few other things, I've got a serious look at that. I mean, this dude basically, think about this basically. You can't stop AJ Brown on the slot routes. Big physical specimen. They need him if they can get back to that short passing game in the Kellen Moore offense. But in a bigger scheme of things, if somebody's going to give me an additional first-round pick and some other draft commodity or maybe a player or two that can help me right now, I have to look at that. And then go in another direction, free receiver-wise, whether it's free agency and or the draft.
Real quick, right? If I could squeeze this in, D-Gun, I apologize.
No.
I'm so glad
talking with my boys, man.
I'm so glad, but your time is valuable to me, so I appreciate you. You said something really key that I was trying to avoid in this conversation because a lot of people think it's clickbait, but you brought it up, and that's the AJ Brown talk. And look, whenever we broach this conversation, Rob and I, we get killed and so on and so forth. And the bottom line is this. The fact of the matter is no team in the NFL, at least right now, is paying 2 wide receivers north of $20 million a season.
There you go.
They're not. It's a very hard feat. So again, Eagles fans, when it comes to this team, yes, I would love to keep AJ Brown. I would love to keep Devontae Smith. I would love to have them together forever. But that's not how the business works. So I don't know how feasible it is that they can keep both of those guys once Devontae gets paid. I think the moment that check is signed, AJ Brown's days become numbered.
Unless you can get him to restructure. Howie is a master at getting key players to restructure. And if he asked AJ and his representation to restructure, then that's on AJ. If they say no, we're not giving up this or we're not giving up that, then your hand is forced. You have to make a decision. But let's face it, through the years, the players that the Eagles have wanted to keep, they have found a way to keep those players. If they identify they need to keep A.J. Brown here, then they'll make it work. Howie Roseman is one of the best in terms of making numbers look favorable to this organization to move in different areas to make other parts of this team stronger. So now it will be on. But again, I'll say this: if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm holding Devontae off until 25. You don't have to pay him this year. The only thing is, Howie, they like to identify those players to get a number that's a wow factor to those of us looking on the outside in, but very favorable at the market value time for the organization now. If Devontae and his representation say, yeah, you know what, we'll just wait until 25, obviously the numbers are going to go up if he continues to have the type of seat. You look at his numbers keep going up every year as a young player. He's one of the best route runners in the game already, has some of the best hands in the game already, and he's like that ever-ready battery, takes a licking but keep on ticking. You hit this dude, you can't keep him down. You can't keep him down. So all of that bodes well in terms of what they want to do with a young, up-and-coming potential Pro Bowl wide receiver.
All right, last one from me, Gunner, on a fun note to look back. Sunday will be 6 years since the Eagles won Super Bowl 52.
Yes.
And I know you were there for every step of the way, man, with that team, that day, that week leading up, the whole night.
That cold.
That cold. Yeah, exactly, in Minnesota. Just share with us, some memories that you had of that time, man. I mean, it was wild. It was, you're facing off against a team that had knocked you off 13 years earlier, whatever it was. And, the whole nine. Just kind of walk us through it.
First of all, when you think about the fan base that showed up in Minneapolis in one of the coldest times of the year, we're talking about temperatures -12, -15. That says a lot about the Eagles fan base, number one. You look at the game itself, and nobody thought the Eagles could beat the evil empire that was the New England Patriots with a backup quarterback, without a left tackle, without their best specialty player, without their franchise quarterback. Nobody was giving the Eagles a chance to win that game. And, of course, a defense giving up 500 yards of offense in less than 4 quarters to Tom Brady. You're thinking, man, if they get the ball last, this game is over. But they kept going toe-to-toe. And, of course, the Philly special highlighted everything. The place went nuts when the Eagles converted that Philly special with Nick Foles. It was a special time for a special group of guys who rode that moniker of underdogs. Nobody likes us. We don't care. And they rode it to the zenith of hoisting that Lombardi trophy. The euphoria I experienced on the field, players on the field crying, confetti coming down. Heck, I even laid on the ground and did a confetti snowman, which I have on a picture behind me on the wall there between the two autographed
I can
football.
see it, yeah.
Yeah, between the two autographed.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
That's awesome. I never knew what that was.
I never knew what that was.
That's me laying in the Minnesota Vikings field, doing a confetti snowman taken by former photographer Jerry Hines.
Oh my God.
No question about it.
Big
Interviewing players emotional, interviewing Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, just being in that locker room, the energy that was in that locker room, that for that one moment in time, everybody outside of the Eagles organization doubted this team, and they pulled off what everybody, the so-called experts, all the national pundits, thought they could not do.
Right.
That was their one moment in time. You know how we go to the NCAA tournament and they use that One Shining Moment song, which I love
that song. I love that song.
That was the Eagles' finishing touch, one shining moment.
One shining moment.
That group of guys, if they get together 20 years from now, that one moment will never be taken away from them, is that they accomplished something that nobody thought. Heck, they weren't even favored in the Super Bowl games, in the playoff games against Atlanta and the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. And
they still pulled it off. The fact that I got to interview these guys, the owner, the general manager, it was just euphoria from start to finish. And, of course, the party was still going on. We got out of the stadium maybe 2.5, 3 hours after the game. You know what time the game started.
Yeah.
There were people still milling about in the stands, on the field, players, families taking pictures. We were still there,
That's so cool, man.
That one moment in time, and I've covered 10, 11 Super Bowls. That by far was my favorite because of all the unexpected things that went on in that game.
You spitting, D-Gun. You spitting, man. You spitting.
Wait, I'm sorry about spit on you, brother. I'm sorry. I'm just excited.
Hey,
you got me excited, man.
Hey, listen, man. The one play that stands out to me was that that 4th down conversion when about 5.5 minutes left in the 4th.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz going
Yeah.
forward on your own side of the field.
Yeah.
So
you're down 32-33 you get that ball back to Tom Brady, you're losing that game in that moment. It's just that simple. And lo and behold, Doug Peterson was just a maverick out there, a cowboy, just gunslinging. And I respect the game, man. And I actually think that's why we lost Super Bowl 22. I mean, the 22 Super Bowl, because
Nick wasn't quite as aggressive.
I felt there were moments where Nick got past it where he normally would have been aggressive. And it came back to bite him. But again, ultimately, defense failed him in the end.
Tone, I appreciate and I respect your one definitive play in that game. There is only one play. There is only one play in that game.
I know where you're going.
Brandon Graham strip sack.
Rip it, baby. Derrick
Because
Barnett.
if they don't get that strip sack, I'm 100% convinced Tom Brady walks that team down the field into the winning score.
I'm with you on that.
They could not stop Tom Brady. Dude, I'm sitting above, and I got above vantage point of what's going on. It's amazing when you're in a stadium how you see things from above that you don't even see with the 26 cameras that they use to show football games nowadays. And I'm watching Patriot receivers running wide open across the middle of the field, and the Eagles defense
Gronk was going crazy.
Gronk was going crazy. Yeah. They couldn't touch Brady. And Brady's just standing back there patting the ball, waiting for guys to free up. You got guys like guys bringing in airplanes on the runway like this. That's how wide open they are. The Eagles secondary was so afraid of the Patriots pass catchers. They were giving them 14, 15-yard cushions. And these guys are like, I'm here. And Brady was chewing them up. Again, 500 yards of offense in 3 quarters.
Insane. Never punted. They didn't punt.
They didn't punt.
Nobody punted, right?
Eagles punted once. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That was
crazy.
That was, man.
Gunner, good stuff, man. Good stuff. We always appreciate it. All the best to Trish. All the best to the entire family. Yep. It's always great seeing you, my friend. All right.
Love the family chat. Love all my people in the chat. You know how I feel about you guys, man. When you need me, Rob, I'll move some things around, make it happen for you 9 times out of 10, brother.
You're the best. Sir. You're the best. All right, Gunner. Have a great weekend, okay?
Y'all be good, man. Have a blessed weekend.
Take care. All right, that is D Gunn. Always great catching up to him.
Always great.
Let's keep that, man. Let's keep that Super Bowl memory momentum going, Tone.
Okay,
let's hit it. Let's come back and let's pick up on some of our fond memories and just going back because there were so many crazy things that happened in that game from Super Bowl 52. So let's keep that rolling when we do it. 1:30, Paul Hudrick will join and we'll talk some Sixers with him. And we'll do our NFL segment at 1 o'clock as we always do. So don't go anywhere. That's Tone. I'm Rob. All right. I want to talk about Pro Action Restoration. If you have a home, business, or property that you own and you go through the pain, the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, or mold damage to that property, you know how challenging that can be. But Pro Action Restoration is on call 24 hours, 7 days a week to assist you. Nighttime, weekend, holiday, you name it. Inconvenient hours, they're there. They're ready to roll. They are licensed, bonded, fully insured, serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. I can tell you from personal experience that Pro Action Restoration will work in conjunction with your insurance company because they did with me. Again, water, fire, smoke damage, mold remediation, whatever you have, whatever issue you may have, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's